Hello, and welcome to another episode of Arn and Eddie Experience. We promise we are not dead. We just take breaks and then decide to come back when it really, really matters for the important people that really, really matter. My name is Eddie Sideburns. Joining me as always is Arn Furious, representing a lovely Ireland shirt there, Arn,
Thank you.
with a great Guardians of the Galaxy poster in the background. And today we are joined by none other than one of the hosts of Football Manager Therapy, Matt Richards. Matt, how you doing?
I'm really well. Thank you ever so much for having me on. It's weird being on the other side of a live podcast / presenting thing where I'm technically the guest. It's very odd. It's very odd.
Yeah, it's that feeling where it's like you don't suddenly go, "I'm going to ask this question." I know the way they're going to ask me questions.
Yeah. That's
So I think we've had this plan since goodness me, before the Euros.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
It was penciled in as we'll do it in August. It still said August on our little planning spreadsheet thing, so it's been in the works for a while.
So we've had it now. So finally, August suddenly turned into November, but there we go. We're lovely to finally have you on. So obviously, the show we've been talking to other people about their football love and what teams they support and kind of moments with that. We've for you, I don't think you have. Do you have a specific team, Matt? Or
no, not really, but kind of. Yeah, I feel like that. Like it's such a long-winded story now. I did used to sort of condense it down to, I'm a football neutral that supports my home country, which is Wales. But it's a little bit more like complex than that. I think this is down to my dad, who was my introduction to football, because my dad used to go and watch Cardiff in the 70s. Which is, I mean, in itself is a sentence. The fact that he survived watching Cardiff in the 70s is a badge of honor. But then when pressed on it, I was like, well, were you a Cardiff fan? And he was like, nah. And he's always been this sort of like, not neutral, but not really attached himself to a club. So my first introduction to going to watch football was Plymouth Argyle, because we used to live down in do you know what's really weird about that? That kit is definitely in his house still. But he was telling me as well, as a little side to this, he used to make his own replica kits, because obviously back in like the 70s, the kits weren't that readily available. So he'd buy say like an Admiral top or an Adidas top, and then find the badges and patches and stuff and make it himself. I was like, this is the coolest thing you've ever told me. So when we were living in Cornwall, St. Austell at the time. So we didn't really have much of a choice. We had Truro, Exeter, Torquay, or Argyle, and we kind of stumbled on Argyle. So they were like the first club I'd go and watch. I was a young Pilgrim, Pilgrim Pete, shout out, best mascot ever. That was Old Home Park. Yeah, we used to stand in the standing area and like the corner tucked away. And my first real memories of football was it smelling of wee and it being the coldest thing. Yeah, it was proper grimy. I think Argyle were in the third tier at the time, and then Neil Warnock was manager, and they got promoted at Wembley. We went to Wembley one year and we got promoted. And there's no real players of any note. Like Adrian Littlejohn was probably the one. Mickey Evans, who's like an Argyle legend, Ronnie Moget as well, who's a bit of a legend. But that was kind of my introduction to football. And then in school, even though I was living down south at the time, everyone kind of either supported Newcastle or United because it was the 90s. So I was like, well, I don't want to support them. Who else has won the Premier League? And I settled on Blackburn Rovers. Which is the worst glory supporter story, isn't it? Then we ended up moving up north, and it came about actually. We went to watch Rovers for the first time, where Mickey Evans had signed for Southampton because Souness was manager. So we were like, oh, we should go and watch Mickey Evans. Whereas I was a bit of a I finally get to see Blackburn Rovers. And the first time we ever went to Blackburn Rovers, again, we were at I think it was the Darwin end. We were right up the top anyway. And we come in and the steward's super nice to us. My dad's thinking like, this is a bit of a weird one. Again, not the experience we used to. And like we sit down and whatever, and like 5 or 10 minutes go past, and then steward comes up and he's like, oh, he's like, I just wanted to apologize. He's like, I hope I was polite to you, but it was like the reason I was a little bit like polite and a bit starstruck was I thought you were Kenny Dalglish. And my dad was like, first of all, wrong accent because he's got quite a thick South Welsh accent. But yeah, and then we watched Rovers for a long time.
Does your dad look like Kenny Dalglish, or
he's kind of like in between Rob Brydon and Kenny Dalglish? Like he's kind of like because he's small and Welsh. And he has sort of a similar sort of facial structure. But then he has that haircut. He still has that. He's had that haircut since, I don't know, the 70s. So he's kind of like,
haircut, isn't it?
Yeah. So he very much shaved those sideburns, Mr. Richards. But yeah, so we were watching Rovers for a bit, for a very long time. And then the ownership changed and the club just kind of like went downhill. So I ended up sort of drifting away and then kind of settled on being a bit of like a football neutral, I guess. And then I used to blog, write about football, and that's kind of where I ended up writing about French football. That's kind of where I ended up landed on Lyon. But even now with Lyon, I'm like, So yeah, it's a bit of a long-winded answer, but yeah.
Do you find that basically a lot of football teams are just fundamentally unlikable if they're successful?
Yeah, do you know what the thing is? Wow, like the annoying me with Rovers was when we were going through that situation, because like I was there for the whole like Keane out situation, and I never thought I'd ever be in a point in my life where I preferred Sam Allardyce to anyone, but I did. But it was just this thing of like with Rovers, I think the only thing I ever saw us win was the Worthington Cup one year, and we had like Nathan Blake up front, which is great for me as a Welshman because I love Nathan. But yeah, and then like getting to the point where it wasn't even the relegation, it wasn't even the fact that we went back down and we struggled. Yeah. Oh, what a moment! What a moment! I think it was also I think that was when we had Andy Cole and Dwight.
Yeah, I can see Andy Cole.
Yeah,
I can't see Dwight. Maybe he's hidden in the back somewhere.
Yeah, we just went for a phase of buying loads of like United rejects. It was great. But it was just the way that the club had changed and like the ground, like it was such like a, I know the joke is always there's no atmosphere at Ewood Park, but it was quite a nice family ground and stuff, but it just became really run down, and it just turned into a really unpleasant experience. And I know exactly the last game we ever went to see was against Peterborough, and Dwight Gale scored a hat-trick against us in 27 minutes. And my dad stood up, ripped up his tickets and went, "We're going." And I was like, "Yeah, sounds." I was like, "That's it." I was like, "That's it." But it's so difficult now to like any football team at all, apart from maybe someone in the Bundesliga. I think that's about it.
And I mean, you were saying there obviously about Lyon and working on French football. Was that kind of your first introduction to European football? Or was it like most people? Was it Gazzetta Football Italia?
Yes, it was 100%. Yeah, Italian football, Channel 4. It was the ritual. It's the reason, actually, it's the reason why I wanted to be a presenter and a host, is because James Richardson is my idol. Like, he is the guy. I have wanted a pink paper to point at all my life. But yeah, it was so important. I think for me to go through that experience of seeing other footballing cultures. And we used to have something, a Welsh TV show called Scorio, which is like it's kind of like our match of the day.
I'm sorry, that's fine.
No, I know it's all right. It's great because like you'd be listening to the whole like commentary, and it'd be like Scorio, Michael Owen, and you're like, "Oh, all right, sweet." But on Scorio, they used to show Italian games and Spanish games, and I think that was a hangover from like Rush playing out in Italy and a couple of other players like making their way abroad. So I always had a little bit of exposure to European football. But then I don't really know why I landed on France when I was writing about it. I just think it happened. Maybe, I don't know. I remember why Lyon, because Lyon at the time were still academy focused and producing like really good, exciting youngsters. Talking to the generation of like Lacazette and Fekir and Umtiti, some really great players, and like even like Anthony Lopez when he was coming through. So I ended up sort of falling into the Lyon side of things because of that. And then they became sort of my main focal point about the sort of team I would cover and write about. So yeah, and that's kind of where I landed. Lacazette is the weirdest player in the world ever. Like if you would ask me in 2010 if he'd be playing in the Premier League, I'd have been like, no. And like he had like one good season in terms of a striker for Lyon that crept into like 1.5 and then got bought by Arsenal. And I was like, oh, okay, he's the one. All right, fair enough. So yeah.
So I mean, in terms of, so obviously that's how you kind of got into kind of European football and stuff like that. When did Football Manager, when did Championship Manager first creep itself into your life?
Oh, it just snuck in there, really. We covered it on the podcast, but I think I'd bought a Champman. I think it was the expansion pack of Champman where they were now featuring Holland and Italy. I think it was called like Champman Europe or something, or Europa or something. Mm. And that was the first one I ever bought. Bought it off a rack in WH Smith's. Do you remember when they used to have the old like PC games on it? Oh, and I was like, let's get that. So we bought that. My dad ended up playing it more than me. And then that kind of started the cycle. And then it was 0102 where me and my dad were like both religious about it. Like religious. Like I'm not saying I failed my GCSEs because of it, but I definitely didn't do as well in my GCSEs as I could have. And you think it was
helping it.
No, but the worst thing about it wasn't me. It was just that this is back in the day where we had like a family computer, and the family computer was in my room. So it'd be like 11:30 at night, and my dad's managing like Carlisle United in like 2032. And then it's like, all right, cool, Dad, I don't need sleep for education. So
Alan's already heard about the Iraq WH Smith.
Yeah. It was my pronunciation the other day of I got it in a rack. At WH Smith. So, yeah. But yeah, 0102 was the first one. And then FM10 was the one where it became an actual problem. So, yeah.
I'm going to see if I can actually put my hands on the copy of it.
I love that.
So while he does that, and is that kind of, as it kind of grew on, it's not only until recently that it's become part of your kind of like, your work. Now, technically with the FM therapy. Pod, do you want to tell us just a little bit about that while
Yeah. Well, for a long time, like it was my like happy safe space sort of thing. Was like I would just disappear into FM when stuff was rubbish, and I didn't really speak to anyone about it. And apart from my dad, really, who was still playing 0102 up until about I think like 2016, and the disc finally gave out. So because I used to every Christmas I'd give him last year's FM, but he just couldn't get into it. He was like, no, this is the level of detail I want. And I'm like, Dad, they've got like a match engine and everything now. He's like, no, I want flashing text. I'm like, all right, mate.
He's a highlights only man. He's a comic.
He is. He loves it. He absolutely loves it. So it was this little weird thing that I kind of liked and had, because I never really got into FIFA at any point. I was pretty into like Pro Evo. Then that kind of died off when it went on from like whatever came after the PS2, so like the PS3 sort of generation. I kind of like fell off. So it was just this thing that stuck, but it was also this thing that I didn't really speak about. And then I found like a couple of people to sort of like occasionally chat about it. And then obviously when I started writing, it became a little bit more intertwined in that, in the sense that I would find like really good like youth products because I'd watch games like Luca Dean, like finding Luca Dean at like 16.
Have you considered becoming a scout?
Yes, I have. I actually have some baseline qualifications for it. So yeah, I had considered it. So yeah, it became this like intertwined thing, and then later on, it just remained this little thing to the side. And then I saw Tony's show, Tony's like stand up on Football Manager Ruin My Life, which we actually watched back the other night on his Twitch stream, which was really good. And there's a line in that where there's the segment actually in that where he says, "Am I an addict or an enthusiast?" And I'm sat in the crowd, and this little light bulb just goes bing above my head, and I was like, Football Manager therapy. So like the original concept of Football Manager therapy was it was going to be a therapy session where I was going to have people on a fainting couch and I was going to psychoanalyze them to determine if this is an actual addiction or just a passion. Now, as a concept, it just does not work. It's a little bit like in bad taste, but it kind of like I was trying to work through it. And then after I watched Tony's show, I'd met Tony because we had a mutual friend. And then me and Tony kept on kind of bumping into each other at various points in our life. And we slowly were like, oh, this guy must be all right. And then we just became friends. And we again, it was weird because our friendship was never based on Football Manager. And then it just came to a point where sort of around about the pandemic, I was like, yo, I've had this idea in the back of my head for years. And I was like, it's kind of based on your show. I was like, would you want to do this with me? And like, he immediately called me and went, yes, we're doing this. Let's do this now. And I was like, all right, cool. So yeah, we just went from there really with it.
And I think you guys have done some quite interesting things. I mean, both me and Arn participated in an FM therapy. What was it? One of the Discord challenges?
Yes.
And I think he's probably going to brag. I'll probably do it for him already. I'm pretty sure you won it, didn't you, Arn?
No, I didn't win it.
No. Oh, you can say
I did listen to the I listened to the podcast for the one after, and Matt is saying like, "Oh yeah, the two I'm worried about are Arn and Eddie," and I was like, "What?"
Well, it's because I knew you had previous tournament experience. So this is the thing. I was like, you were kind of like my outsiders coming in, and I was like, oh, I've got keeping an eye on these two.
Oh well, I think my achievement still is. We took part in, I think Ian McIntosh and Alex Stewart did. They worked for Set Pieces at the time,
yeah,
and they did a FM Bet Bright Cup, and they went around the country, and they came up to Glasgow, and they had games sometimes that went live on Facebook, and I was the game chosen to go live on Facebook, so I'm just like, I can't really. Can we swear? Yeah,
No.
I was just no. Okay, I was like bugger. And then ended up winning the game with like one shot on target.
Which is even funnier because I obviously knew you did that, but then I did a podcast with Dave Black, who is well known for documenting CM 97, 98. So I went on Dave's podcast, and then like afterwards, he's just casually like, he's like, oh, we've got a mutual acquaintance, and I was kind of like, well, yeah, I know you know Tony, and he was like, no, Eddie, and I was like, oh, that's really weird. And then he explained that you'd met at the tournament, and I was like, oh, this is just a tiny little world that we exist in. But yeah,
he's lovely. He helped me get football championship manager set up on my my laptop because I am an absolute novice. So, but yeah,
I love that all you do is you mention Football Manager to somebody, and within seconds that you're into the save. It's like, what's your save? Oh yeah, and all of a sudden I'm hearing about someone's Malaysian league save and how it's going and how it's been going over the past 5 seasons or whatever. And it's insane, really. We're all lunatics.
Well, that's kind of where we wanted to exist as a space, as a podcast, because there is some wonderful FM podcasts out there. And the Grass and Gear were like one of the ones that we first discovered. And there's obviously 5 Star Potential who we're pretty friendly with, some great people under that umbrella. And obviously like Macintosh now as the Football Manager show with The Athletic. But we kind of never had, like, we never experienced this podcast that was about the storytelling aspect of it, because me and Tony are a weird mix. I think I'm probably more analytical and tactical and talk about sort of numbers and whatever, whereas Tony is literally I just want to tell a story. Like he's, his brand on Twitch is that he's rubbish at Football Manager, and every single week it's, I'm going to get relegated. Let's see if I survive.
Every time I'm in his chat, I keep telling him what he's doing wrong, and he's like, it's fine.
Exactly. So we were kind of like with this weird dynamic of Football Manager players, and we're like, this should be our subject and our topic. When we first started the podcast, we were kind of like, we had these concept episodes, which I'm glad we did, because it kind of took us a while to find this sort of formula that worked for us. Because we tried loads of crazy stuff. Like, I still love the Come Down With Me episode and the Christmas office party and stuff. But I think it was just so odd for people that were coming in for a Football Manager podcast that we were doing these kind of like comedy concept episodes. And then we just kind of like, it was the Discord.
Got a question for Alan that I think he's going to lead into that. He said, like, did you expect FMT to grow into the community around the pod that it has?
No.
There's a strong Discord community that's kind of attached to
No, I didn't expect it. But the one thing that I was really adamant about, and Tony was exactly the same, was that we had this like anger and frustration of never completely controlling our creative endeavors, shall we say, that we never felt that like we'd ever made something creatively or produced something creatively that was 100% us and 100% represented like our ideals, our morals, our feelings and emotions. Like, and the only thing that Tony really had was his Football Manager show. And that, like, the reason I love that show is that because I know Tony, that is 100% Tony. And we really wanted the podcast to be 100% us. So that when it turned out that other people cottoned on and were like, oh yeah, we're like this as well, and like, this is how we feel about it, that it started to grow. And I have to really say that from my point of view, it's Tony that's growing it and taking it further beyond the podcast with the Twitch stuff in it. And it's his Discord, and he's got this wonderful manner about him that he is just really relatable and really brings people into something and engages, and like he feels like your mate down the pub, but he's your mate down the pub that doesn't have horrible opinions about football. He's quite, he's quite aware of stuff and quite, on stuff. And, a big thing for us was that we always wanted to speak about mental health, because obviously the name of the show. And then that continued on to making sure that we were always giving back to certain like charities or shining lights on certain aspects of it. And I think for us, the excitement really came from being able to be like, hey, this is just us. Like, this is no filter. I say there's no filter. I do have to edit out Tony swearing as much, because he does swear a lot. But we just wanted to be
Scottish
like
people.
It is. But we were just like, we're really proud that when you listen to an episode of us, that we are those people. We're a little bit like, all right, the lights are on and the microphones are on, so maybe watch our P's and Q's and, maybe think about what we're saying a little bit more. But we love that the podcast, and now the extension of like what Tony does with his content, is that I think if someone came and spoke to us, they would be like, oh, you are just these people, and I'm that's the thing I'm most proud of, like, that we made this thing that we actually adore. Like, we love it. I've never made anything in my life or created anything in my life that I love as much as this podcast. And we don't really have any interest of being rich and successful. We keep joking that, like, if Manscaped want to sponsor us, I will talk about shaving my balls, no problem. But like, we're not in it to make a ton of money. We're just in it because we want people to share this experience with us, and then listen to us or interact with us, and then go, oh, I now have this enthusiasm to go and put it back into the game.
Yeah, I think I can. I'm already just tentatively getting ready to play at some point later today. The one with Ivica Stroke.
Yeah,
I think that one just immediately sounds awesome. They're going to interview Oliver Dawes' pseudonym, Johnny Sharples.
Yeah, that episode was the most fun we had, because Johnny was the first ever guest we had on. And we really didn't want to have guests, because we were so aware that the dynamic of me and Tony is the main pull of the show. And then Johnny just came on, and it morphed into this thing that was so different to what we did, and it was so fun. So we that is our one of our favorite ever episodes, because it's very different to what we do usually, but Johnny just gets it, like just completely gets it, and we're like, oh, this is fun. And then that kind of made us feel a little bit different about guests. And then since we've had like RDF Tactics, who we absolutely adore, dude's an absolute tactical genius. If I was a football club, I would hire him like this minute. He's just ridiculously like knowledgeable, intelligent.
He's very good at explaining things as well, because like when he's putting the videos together on you, because I see the tactic like as it's laid out, and then like he the way he explains how players move and how things interact, that has like been like really helpful in like setting up my own stuff. So
that's
yeah,
why
very clever.
I think that's why, from a footballing point of view, where I know he works for Total Football Analysis, he does some videos for them, and they've supported him for a few things. Lee Scott is someone that's obviously from the Football Manager community that's now gone on to write books about Klopp and Guardiola and Bielsa. And Lee's super supportive as well, and has been supportive to RDF. But I think that's the key point with him, is that the talent you must have to explain something so technical in such an easy to follow and understand way. I think if I was running a football club, I'd be like, I want this person. So we had RDF on, and we were so happy about that. And then we had Tina Keach from Sports Interactive, who's head of women's research, who we've been wanting to have on since they announced the game going live. And then we got to sort of, the way we wanted to do that episode was we wanted the community to have an introduction to who Tina is, because I think there is a bit of mystique about her, because she's not a football manager person. She played football to, I think, a semi-professional level. She played in America for a bit. She was in university. She played in some London leagues, so played against a lot of the top WSL talent now, and we wanted to introduce her as this football person to the community. And so we were really proud and quite privileged to have that opportunity, and she was wonderful. So I think we'll occasionally have guests on, but we always want to make sure that it's a person that is a little bit different in terms of, we don't want just like content creators in terms of like YouTubers or Twitch creators. We want the people that are attached to this game in like an interesting way. And that's kind of like the angle we're going to have, but we're probably going to like dot them in every now and again going forward.
I mean, in terms of obviously with how Football Managers now come across in kind of Twitch, there's now, online, tournaments and stuff like that. They're now being set. You're having leagues being set up, and then obviously got the streamer showdown and stuff like that. I know Tony's taken part in some of them, and I don't think he's done quite well.
He didn't do very well, did he? No.
I see you are suddenly starting to get the Twitch bug, Mr. Richards.
Yeah, it's a bit frustrating because I don't quite have the setup yet to nail it. And I discovered the other day that the new game does not like my my computer, so it's a little bit on hold at the minute. But for me, it was because I mentioned that I've done some scouting courses, and I've done some data analysis courses as well, and like I'm actually in real life, that's kind of where I'm leaning towards. I actually shocked myself of how much more interested I was about numbers. This is something that we got like I think like a C or a D in GCSE math, and I'm like, oh, I'm now going to learn pi and trigonometry because I want to make radar graphs and scatter graphs. I'm like, where has this come from? This is dead weird. So for that's now like my enjoyment with Football Manager as an extension, is that I like to look at the game from an analytical point of view. So that was kind of my idea.
The data hub's been an exciting one for you then.
It's become, yeah, it really has, because oh my goodness, extracting raw data and then putting into like Tableau, or now what I'm trying to do is with Python, it's not fun. the fun bit is the visualizations and sort of presenting them, but the raw data collection and extraction is a nightmare. So now having this center where it's just like, what do you want? Here it is. But I think as well,
Alan's just said the whole stream was fantastic when Matt broke everything down. Still shocked he got a tune out of Solanke. Like, how do you make Dominic Solanke good? That's
so Yeah. So it kind of comes down to the like recruitment analytical side with it, where I'd read a couple of articles about the illusion of transfer fees in football and how people don't understand what a transfer fee is. Oh, bless him in his Liverpool shirt. He's scored 11 and 16 this season, so there you go. But yeah, I read these couple of articles about how there's this transfer fees in football are like they're real, but they're also made believe, because like we have this idea of, the example I use in the stream is if Erling Haaland is bought for 137 million. Is he worth 137 million, or is he worth the 7 million that you're paying him for his contract? And the argument is that the transfer fee is actually a termination fee of that contract. And the real value of the player is his contract, how much you're spending on him. And so you're spending like 7 million over a four-year period. So I broke it down into thinking about transfers going, is this player worth the termination fee as an investment, and then are they then worth the value that I'm going to be paying them over X amount of period? And I settled with the whole save of this concept of transfers. If you are trying to, and I hate this term because it's kind of like being watered down, but moneyball your way to success, the best thing is the best transfer is the transfer that's best for right now. And Dom Solanke was that, because we were a small club that went from League One straight up to the Championship to straight up to the Premier League. And I got Dom Solanke for, I think I paid like 7.5 million for him, maybe, which probably everyone's like sat there going, you paid 7.5 million for Dom Solanke.
Bournemouth played like 19 million pounds.
Yeah, that's true. So yeah. But then I basically went and broke down and played Accounting Manager 2021 and broke down how much Dom Solanke cost me over the period he was at the club and how much money he actually earned me, which was keeping me in the Premier League. So he earned me £98 million. So my argument was because he was top goal scorer that year, and he was second top goal scorer in the league. So I looked into it in the sense of, I feel like we're looking at transfers wrong, and there's become this thing in football where everyone's, it's almost like this perverse obsession with like, oh, Kylian Mbappe's worth 200 million. It just feels icky, and I don't like it. I was like, and again, it's that thing of, 200 million to, say he goes to Real Madrid is I was going to say it's nothing to them. It is a lot to them, seeing as they're broke. But you know what I mean? Going to like a big club that are financially stable, it isn't anything to them. But is he really getting the value out of him? Are you really thinking long term? And I think the rise of teams like Brentford are obviously the example. The Danish sides that have also have the similar model and similar ownership thing. It just got me to thinking about a free transfer that covers you for a year or two is probably so much more valuable to a club that doesn't have this financial clout going forward, and then breaking it down of like, well, how much is this player worth? So yeah, I kind of went.
Remind me to share with you the financials of my Dundee United save, because I'm particularly pleased with it.
That's one of the best things I think I've done about this podcast is converting Arn to support Dundee United. And also, every time we talk about Barcelona, every time we talk about Barcelona and their current financial state, it's always funny because I always send them some kind of some kind of message like Xavi paying out his own manager release because they don't have the money.
It's that thing of like, I understand where we are in football with the glitz and the glamour, right? I understand that the Champions League is enticing, especially to a young person that doesn't quite understand anything beyond football. And why should they? Because neither did I when I was a kid. But that old saying that you get more conservative the older you get. I'm the other way. I'm going like so much more far to the left the older I get, because it's just that you learn more stuff and you find out stuff, the way stuff's run and stuff. And I've suddenly become this like anti just the way that football's run, and because it's sometimes I feel like it's a bit of an inward battle, because the Red Bull clubs are the perfect example of this. I love the way that Leipzig and Salzburg play football, and to a lesser extent, New York Red Bulls. But I think their coaching and their coaching philosophy, and especially Ralf Rangnick, is fascinating. I think the way they have changed football, especially in like Bundesliga, and the style of football they play is it's so. I never realized that would be the style of football for me, but I love it. I was watching Dortmund Leipzig last night, and it was the most fun I've had watching a football game in so long, because it was like watching an ice hockey game where everything was just played in transition at speed. And I love it. But then I'm massively at odds with what the Red Bull model represents from a footballing aspect of this. You've basically got feeder clubs and sister clubs and questionable transfers, and they have taken over the history of certain clubs and changed that. And it's a little bit, you feel a bit about it. And then you read even more into Red Bull, the company, and their less than savory things that they do with certain channels and who they support on those channels in Germany, and why they're so hated within the Bundesliga. And I'm constantly at odds with this from a completely aesthetic point of view or completely footballing point of view. I find Leipzig completely enticing, and I've played as Leipzig on Football Manager, and like, oh man, I love this. But then I'm just massively at odds with just what they represent. So it is an interesting one where now I've kind of, I think about football very, very differently. And again, it's that, and then that sort of brings up questions of like, well, is what Brentford doing any different, or is what the City Group doing any different? And it becomes quite complex and quite difficult to.
So where do you draw the line with this?
Yeah, it's like, where do you draw the line with it? Because we know where City's money comes from, and I'm massively against where City's money comes from. But then if you're a kid in Manchester and you see their academy stadium, which is phenomenal, which I've been to, that they use for their youth team and their WSL team, and I used to live in Ancoats. That was where I lived in Manchester, and I saw that place go from one of the worst areas of Manchester to one of the best. And it's, obviously I'm a little bit more aware, and I can make a slightly more difficult choice. But if you're a young person getting into football, I can completely understand why that's exciting and enticing, and why there's this culture around football now where like progression and money is like, oh, it's exciting, and that feeds into games like FIFA. Ultimate Teams unlocking packs, and I've got this gold edition Kevin De Bruyne, and it has changed how people interact with football. And I never thought I'd be the, and I don't think I am, but I never thought I'd be the old man that was like, oh, back in my day.
Back in my day.
But there is a little bit of it. This kind of.
I feel like I'm old enough to start doing that.
Yeah,
I've got to the level now.
I think I'm getting close.
Meanwhile, youngster over here. I think I think you're right. Microtransactions have kind of taken over a lot of kind of things, and obviously there's been rumblings of 2K getting involved within the FIFA and trying to buy over FIFA from EA. There was one thing I did want to ask that I saw Zealand put a video up about, and I think you know where this is going.
Yes.
And I'm sorry if this is just judging upon you, but it's just one thing I did genuinely want to ask. In terms of Football Manager going to a subscription-based service instead of the game every year, what was your thoughts on that, being as someone who's technically part of that kind of creator world?
First of all, I have absolutely no animosity towards Zealand or any, this idea that like, oh, well, screw him and blah, blah, blah. Like, he just put his opinion out into the world, and there was people that agreed and there was people that disagreed. And I'm one of the people that disagree, because, I watched the video, and I actually watched it twice, because I was kind of like, I understand. There he is. I was like, I understand logistically what you're suggesting here. I was like, I understand the structure that you're suggesting, but I don't know why you're suggesting it. Like, that was where I fell on it. Was it's not broken, so why fix it? If say, for instance, as well, I think price points are a really important thing in this conversation, where if I was paying 70 quid a year to buy a new game, like a FIFA on my PlayStation or whatever, I'd probably have a massive issue. But early access, what you pay, 32, 33 quid?
35 if you pay the game full, and then 32 if you get a discount by supporting a streamer like Tom FM or something like that. So
nice.
It works out well.
Yeah, exactly. And like, I'm okay with paying that, every year. And I used to buy football managers every 2 years because I cottoned on to that's how the cycle works. It usually takes them 2 years to sort of like put in a new feature. But again, I understand this constant, it's probably like that generation, isn't it? Like younger generation of that constant gratification of having something new constantly. But I like the build up to the new game. I'm like, oh, are they going to fix it? And I also really enjoy them never fixing anything, like never changing the set piece creator, because it gives me something to moan about, and that's healthy. I don't agree with everything. Like for me this year, I was like, the data hub is like, the holiest of holy, and it was clever because it completely took me off thinking about they've never changed that set piece creator and all the other issues. But I kind of like that Football Manager is a little bit broken, and I kind of like that it's imperfect, because it makes it a different experience, and I like that it's still different. I like that it's a bit old school in the sense that the price of it is a little bit old school, and the people behind the game and the majority of the community, I think it would really divide the community, and not in a positive way.
Yeah, I don't really understand the subscription thing. So, like, if we are wanting to pay that every month, it's like, well, what happens if you stop? You can't play the game. Like,
it's. I think as well, to play the other side of it, or like to consider the other side of it, I understand from a creative point of view where this mindset will come, because they play the game in such a different way. There is this, with the versus mode coming in now, I think that might change how the game is played. And obviously draft mode is taking a massive like upward turn because of things like the Streamer Showdown and the other tournaments as well. So I kind of understand existing in this almost, dare I say it, esports sort of environment. And I think Football Manager will become an esport, or there will be some high-level competitive nature of it. But if you asked the majority of the people that play the game, and I genuinely still think it's the majority, most people just like the fact it's a single-player game that they can hide away in their bedroom and make Leyton Orient the champions of Europe. Like, I feel like that's still the majority. I'm not going to say it'll never change, but I think that's why it stung when that was sort of pitched, was because I think people aren't ready for it. But again, to Zealand's credit, I also understand when he says in the video of it's maybe better to be proactive than reactive. Again, I don't agree with it, but yeah, it was a weird one. Again, understand it, but yeah, just not for me. Not for me.
Yeah. I think it was one of those ones when I saw the video come out, I think my timeline was very much on one side of it.
Yes.
And I was like, right, okay. It's like, well done for at least kind of seeing your thing, but
Now, if you ask me about the opposition to the women's leagues going into the game, now I am very angry and very on one side about that. Which is that I have failed to see an argument about the introduction to the games being a bad thing.
The only argument they ever seem to have, and you notice I'm saying they because it's very much them. And
yes,
not
correct.
Is that it takes time away from other things. And I'm like, what other things?
That was the argument, wasn't it? Like, well, this in the game isn't fixed.
It's like you're dragging someone kicking and screaming away from the match, and you go, no, I want to fix it.
Which is completely untrue, because SI have been open. They are developing their own women's specific department. So there's obviously Tina's head of research, and she's currently looking for researchers. They have brought a lot of people into that company. And again, it wasn't secret. They spent the whole of last year expanding that company. They've got new headquarters, new premises, which is bigger, and they are growing it. And they know this is an investment. So they're not taking anyone away from anything. And I just thought it was such a really shallow argument of like, well, this isn't fixed in the game. And like, if you got an opinion, say it with your chest, and that is that you just still have a massive issue with women's football, and that is your issue, because the one thing that women's football or maybe the only thing that women's football is lacking is exposure and finances. And the minute they get those things, I think we're going to see an explosion of people being invested and interested.
It's always a fun game. Like every time I watch women's football, it's good. It's a good sport.
I think the thing is as well, having the Americans come over, the likes of Kristen Press and Alex Morgan,
Tobin Heath to Arsenal recently as well.
Rose Lavelle and I can't remember the other one who was part of the one who went to Man City. Having them come in and play in that short period of time while the American League was stopped, was good exposure for them as well. Alex Morgan was in a lot of coverage, quite a lot. I mean, obviously she had just given birth and was just coming over to play for Spurs, but the Women's Super League I think is now on Sky.
Yeah.
So it is getting that coverage, but obviously needs to get more.
The Women's Champions League is on DAZN for free on YouTube for the next 5 years, which has been wonderful. I get to watch, Lyon and Wolfsburg and Juventus and all these big clubs. And that is only going to make this thing continue to grow and the quality get better. And, when we were speaking to Tina about it, who has firsthand experience of this, she was playing in London when there was no infrastructure and there was no money in it. And she went and experienced the US structure with the college system and the university system and the amount of exposure and money that she was like, it was completely like night and day. She was like, I'd walk into a pub and they'd be like, oh, what do you do? And she's like, I'm a soccer player and I play for Sussex. She's like, oh my God, I'm going to buy you a drink. And then she'd be like celebrated. And she'd come back over here and people would sort of, frown upon what she did. So I think the only thing that has been lacking is that funding in that plan and that infrastructure in place. So
the exposure, I feel it feels like it's coming because like a lot of the players who currently play for England feel like they're creeping towards being household names, whereas like before it was very much a case of like you wouldn't be able to pick them out of a lineup because you didn't see them on television at all. But like it'd be interesting to see how well received the women's Euros are next summer. So I thought the last World Cup was pretty good in terms of people watching it.
I think another thing that's shown how interesting and how kind of more the eye should be on it is Emma Hayes. Her coverage as a pundit in the Euros, phenomenal. Which won her. I think she won an award. Pundit.
She was pundit of the year. Yeah.
And I mean, if clearly, people in the industry are thinking she knows what she's talking about, and obviously she's managing this Chelsea side. Because I mean, I think me and you, Aaron, were talking about watching. I think we watched the final of the Champions League last year.
Yeah, they got absolutely rinsed by Barcelona.
It was a shame, But then that Barcelona side are phenomenal. Like all this noise about Barca have lost their soul and Xavi's gonna come back and inject it. I'm like, go and watch the women's team. I was like, they play Barcelona football better than Pep Guardiola. They're phenomenal. Like they're unbelievably talented, and it's just because you haven't seen them. But this argument about Football Manager of like, they're not good enough to be in the game. I'm like, mate, you've taken over. I nearly swore that. I was like, you've taken over bloody some Indonesian side in like the third tier and made them the best team in the world. Well, why aren't you calling out that? Why aren't you up in arms about the Latvian league being added? Like, just if you have an issue with this, then you are number one, you're wrong. But like, at least don't be a coward about it. And that's what I got really angry about it, because I saw so many people that I actually have a lot of time for and a lot of respect for within the community put out these really limp excuses when I'm just like, just say that you're a misogynist. Like, just say it. I'd probably respect you more. But I'm super excited about it because from a game point of view, it's so exciting. I get to I could technically manage Olympique Lyonnais men and women's side, and then manage OL Reign in America and become the greatest Olympic Lyon manager of all time. Like, that's cool. That's so cool from content. And then I also get to discover a generation of young footballers that I've never come across. And like, how excited did we get about Matthias Arezzo? We get to find the woman's equivalent of Matthias Arezzo. Like, as an FM player, that is the appeal of all appeals. I can't see a valid argument against that. So yeah.
It's definitely something that's been a long time coming, and I'm glad it is finally coming into the game. I think it'll be amazing for someone who probably just wants to be easy and win the game will just go, right, I'll just go the women's US national team. Dominating everything like 10-0, 8-0. And then there were people who were going, oh, you get those results in football. I'm sorry for bringing up some bad memories here. But then you just see Derby beat Blackburn Fulham beat 7-0.
Yeah.
These results can happen in anything. So I think, obviously, we're touching there in terms of the future football manager. Obviously, it looks like it's quite healthy and it's quite developing. I'll quickly just touch on it. The beta, obviously, you've been playing in the data hub. I will ask the nerd question. What has been your save? Did you go Lyon? Did you decide to go something? Or was it a Hull one?
It was actually FC Dallas, because mainly because of
their stadium.
Yeah, mainly because of Ricardo Pepi. I was like, this is probably the only opportunity I'm going to get to manage him in this year's game, and he's very good. But I always like to do an MLS save because I like the MLS, which kind of was born out of playing on Football Manager, and then kind of grew into real life as well. So yeah, that was super fun. I enjoyed it. The match.
I have no idea what you mean. I may have a Vancouver Whitecaps shirt over on the right.
I know. I remember. I spoke ill of Vancouver on a podcast once, and you took great exception to that, and I apologize. I think I referred to them as the worst Canadian side, which isn't true this year. They have been better. But yeah, so yeah, I went to the MLS and that was fun. I really like the match engine. I think it's exciting in the sense that movement and space manipulation seem to be the big things this year. I'm very excited to see a central defender see space in front of him and run into that space. That is great. There is some problems, there's a couple of issues where there's a lot of crosses, there's a lot of headers, but they usually get ironed out. But overall, the beta experience was fun. And I'm never really, I don't pass judgment in the beta because it's a beta.
Yeah,
that's kind of the idea of it.
How dare you pass judgment on a game that's not even ready yet?
Yeah, that continuously tells you like this is not the full game. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. Obviously, the data hub is a big thing for me, and I think what's going to be now fascinating from a creation point of view is I'm really excited about how we start to articulate of like, hey, now you have these visualizations and this data and it's easy and accessible. Now we translate it, because one of the biggest things with data analysis is actual translation into, hello, these are real words that really mean things. So it's going to be fun, I think. And I think the data team have done a really good job and really like built on what they previously had, because all this data and information was in the game for the last couple of years, but you had to know where you were looking and then do lots of maths and put it into something else. But yeah, I'm nerd me is fully up for this year, definitely.
Yeah, I'm sure we've all got thanks to everyone at Sports Interactive other than Lewis.
Bless him.
Everyone other than him. Just kidding. We love you, really.
I went to a game with Lewis last week.
Well, sorry for that. Right. I'm kidding. Right. So now, we normally would talk about like historical highs and lows of your football team, but to be fair, I mean, Blackburn obviously won the league. Then the Venkies came over. Then Keen out. Would you say the Keen out and the Venkies kind of was that the kind of historical? That'd be probably the historical low, and then the historical high would have been Jack Walker and Sutton and Shearer.
You forget that I'm Welsh.
Oh,
I have my incredible lows have always been Wales based.
Okay, just fire away.
Constantly this existence of disappointment, and like the one thing. So I was never allowed to support England, even though, despite my accent, and everyone's probably like questionable. And I have lived in England for the majority of my life, but I never had a choice. Like my grandfather wouldn't have let me in his house if I was like turned up in an England shirt. So it was never a choice for me. But the problem I had was that Wales were rubbish and have been rubbish for a long time. So for a young kid kind of trying to get into this Welsh team, it was hard. But I sort of embraced them in like the early 2000s, where like Mark Hughes became manager because he was Blackburn manager, and he played for Blackburn, so that was a nice little easy transition for me. So one of the earliest highs was us beating Italy in the early 2000s, which was great. You know, full on Cannavaro, Buffon, Del Piero level Italy. That was amazing. One of the greatest games of football I've ever seen in terms of the outcome. So that's kind of where it started with Wales. But then just every year after that, it was just disappointment after disappointment after disappointment until the Euros happened. And then I still can't quite believe that. I still don't think that happened. And I don't know, like it was a fever dream. It was unbelievable. And the best thing about that tournament is that I know we obviously get to the semi-finals, first major European tournament or first international tournament in 57 years. And the thing that I took away from it was, yeah, I'm really proud of these players and we've overachieved massively, but I hated that we lost to England. I hated it. It eats away at me every time. But I think it's I think what's really nice with like the Welsh fandom now, and it really did. It took roots earlier, but I think the thing that really happened around 2016 was that it introduced a new generation of Welsh fans and Welsh people to the national side, and we have now got a really nice, diverse fan base that do a lot of community outreach, and we really focus on every aspect of what being Welsh is and that identity of being a modern Welsh person. And I'm really proud of that. You know, we've got fan groups like the Rainbow Wall, who came out of the Euros as well. We have an Asian-centric Welsh supporters group that are doing amazing community work. And it's been such a pleasant experience to be a Welsh fan now. And again, because, you know, when my dad was going to watch Wales in the 70s and the 80s, it was just violence and crowd trouble, and not against the other team, against our own Welshmen. Like, you know, it was like North versus South.
Yeah, that divide's always been there, hasn't it? Yeah.
Whereas now it just feels more unified. And, you know, I know with the last international tournament, there was a couple of salty Welsh fans, and it was disappointing to see. But I think the vast majority got behind the team and want, you know, kind of. I think there's also an acceptance as well of like, hey, we're not that good, and we always kind of overachieve a little bit, and we are coming to the end of this generation. So, yeah, I'm really proud to be a Welsh fan in 2021, which I never thought I'd ever get to a point. And again, that's not out of anything other than success, but just feeling like a part of something and feeling really a part of like that support for the team.
Yeah. I think the only problem was your team and fans probably don't ever want to see the back of Baku again or ever want to go there again.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, that was, I actually pre-pandemic, we looked at it and we were potentially going to go to Rome for the Italy game, but we looked into Baku and it was the most insane thing I've ever seen in terms of a journey.
It's fast.
Bless a lot of the people went out there. They are genuinely crazy people. I believe Tim Hartley is one of the fans that went out there. Another person that does a lot of great charity work through I believe it's Gol, the 5-side pitches and stuff. He's a great person. And he was out in Baku, and they did again, like the Welsh fans went there and they played some games against some local teams. And
I saw that on BBC. I saw that. I think BBC did a thing on it and they were covering it. That was nice to see.
And again, like that, you know, that's I love that about Wales Away now, is that's what Wales Away has become, rather than let's go and wear bucket hats and punch other people that are from Wrexham because we're from Swansea. Like, it's nice that we've got to a point where it's a little bit more positive.
Yeah, it's a great atmosphere. I went to watch Wales play like 2 months ago at like Cardiff's ground, and the atmosphere was unbelievable. Like, it was so good. Especially with the anthem. Like, having them belt the anthem out was just like, and I can't speak Welsh, so the only bit I know is the glad, which is
that's the best bit.
So, but I was able to do that bit, but the rest of it, I was just like,
I'm the same. I'm it's not even Pigeon Welsh. It's this is what this sounds like at this point in the anthem. So I'll go with that. But oh man, like I've definitely cried at Wales matches because it gets me. Like it's for me, my football fandom is so attached to that country, and as well, like I know it is land of my fathers, but it really is land of my fathers. I don't have a great relationship with my family, and it's only really my dad and my granddad that I have some form of positive relationship with. And with those two, it was always football. My dad's a man of a certain age and isn't the most emotionally open person. So it's bless him, but I love him to death. So, but football has always been that connection for us. It was the same with my granddad before he passed away, and I think they very subtly introduced my love of football and what it really is to love football. I still get very emotional with Wales, and that's why I care so much and I'm so passionate about it, because I'm a bit of a weird person in the sense that I've always felt like a fake Welshman because I moved when I was 5 and I don't have the accent, and I used to have to deal with kind of like every time we'd go back to the valleys, like I'd have to deal with my dad's friends going, oh, but you're not really Welsh, and like I struggled for a long time to find a place of who I was within my own nationality. And again, really the journey I went on from the early 2000s to 2016 showed that I could be a proud Welshman and love that country, despite all these things that people said. And I think that's why I really love the community that's been built around the team now. And that extends over to the women's team as well. And we're so passionate about that. We know every youngster that's coming through the youth teams. And I feel like there is a real connection of togetherness, and also this getting rid of this preconception of what a Welsh person is. Like these old worn out tropes and like, oh, well, you're not this and you're not that. And it's like, no, if you are Welsh and say you are Welsh, then you are Welsh. No one had a problem with Ashley Williams being English when he scored against Belgium in the Euros, did they? So it's like, I feel like now we've got to a really cool place of being proud Welsh people after a long time of this real like backwards idea of what it is to be a certain nationality.
Yeah, I think Welsh football is going to be taking a bit more of a higher up as well, because you've got Cardiff, you've got Swansea, you've got newly owned, and still can't believe that's an actual thing that happened, Wrexham. With Rob McElhenney and Ryan Reynolds. I can't believe Rob McElhenney actually spoke Welsh.
Yeah,
to me.
He speaks more Welsh than me. Fair play.
I know, I was about to say, he's putting you to shame. No. But yeah, so that's kind of, obviously your international experience has been good with that. I think I will move on to the 4 questions,
Let's
which
do it.
we have. So favorite player of all time, Matthew?
I have 2 for 2 different reasons. 1, because I got to see them play, and 2, because they are my favorite player of all time. So player number 1 is Guy. Oh, what a player. What an absolute, that really like worn out football cliche of he's a Rolls Royce of a footballer. That man, oh my goodness. I have not seen someone manipulate a ball like that since David Blaine. He is a magician. What a magician. I was there for because me and again mutual acquaintance Linny had a bit of an experience with the volley where the ball doesn't spin. We were both there for that game. But the problem was we had to have a discussion after. We were like, oh, which one was it? Because he did it all the time. Like he was just, and he never ran. Like, oh my goodness. He never broke a sweat. And it was this beautiful time period as well. We had like Robbie Savage that would run around like a headless chicken, and then Guy would just get on the ball and do something unbelievable. But yeah, I love Guy. Yeah.
I remember he was part of like the Rangers revolution that came to Blackburn, because you then were like, we'll take him, we'll take Barry Ferguson, we'll take the housewife's favourite Lorenzo Amoruso.
Oh, he was dreadful, absolutely dreadful for us. Yeah,
he was awful, but he would probably have increased your tickets.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
So yeah, the two guys. Just remember, like he had, as you said, he had such kind of great way with the ball. And he was just it was kind of a points magical.
I think as well, like he was right at the end of that generation where clubs still had these players that were, you kind of always went, how's no one bought him? Yeah, and I loved that about him. Like he never ever showed interest about wanting to go to a bigger, quote unquote, bigger club or go anywhere else. He loved Blackburn and he loved playing for him. Unlike, like obviously, I remember the Lucas Neal saga where he was trying to position a move to Liverpool and then ended up at West Ham, so he got what he deserved. But like Tuga never had that. Like he felt. I love that era of football where you had these little magicians. You know, like imagine if Tony Yeboah went and played for United or Liverpool. Like you wouldn't remember Tony Yeboah in the same way that because he played for. And again, I'm not, no disrespect for Leeds because they're not a small club, but it felt like there was an era of football where everyone had these little magicians, and you were kind of like, oh, are they ever going to leave? And like two guys, that one for me, he was just so good, so good.
Okay, so that's number one.
Yeah.
Who's your second one?
So this is everyone's gonna be like, why? Johan Gorkuf. So yeah.
I see. Okay.
So Johan Gorkuf, again, two guys, the football reason, right? Because I saw him play football and he was a magician. Johan Gorkuf was my muse for my French football writing, because I have never ever come across anyone that is so fascinating, because he was positioned as the heir to the Zidane throne in France, and I know that's like everyone, but like he seemed at one point like legitimately this is the number 10 for France. He moves to AC Milan, and then it just all goes wrong. And it all goes wrong not because of necessarily his footballing ability, but who he was as a person. And he's just this enigma of, he's outwardly this beautiful and handsome man, like genuinely breathtaking, just unbelievable. He's what
let me just put this up. Look at that.
Look at them cheekbones. Like he is a poster boy for not only his club but like his country. You know, and then there just seemed to be this real issue with him accepting his fame. He was really insular and, introverted, and keeps himself away from everyone, including his teammates, which created these fractures in his relationship everywhere he went. AC Milan, like the comments that Ancelotti made about him and Maldini made about him, I think Ancelotti called him mentally ill, which I was just like, unbelievable. And like they really despised him at Milan because he didn't integrate in the team in a traditional way. So he almost becomes this like archetypal, misunderstood number 10. And I love that. Like there's a mystique about him where you look at him and the things that he's done in his career, and he has these moments and these goals. And if you saw them in those isolated situations, you go, he's the greatest football player ever lived. The goal he scored for Bordeaux against Paris Saint-Germain in, I think it was like 08, 09, when he came back from Milan, it's phenomenal. And there's the French commentary is incredible because Christophe Dugarry is the guy on the commentary, and he loses his mind. Like you literally hear this man just go, oh, but it's this phenomenal goal. And like, again, it turns out to be this false dawn where like Bordeaux, a Laurent Blanc led Bordeaux, win the league, and this Gorkuf at the center of it, and you're like, oh, this is going to be it. And then he joins Lyon and his career just goes like that. And he's just so fascinating. If I was ever to write a book about a footballer, or there was a mastermind like style quiz, Gorkuf would be it, because there is just, it's my romantic part of football where he's this troubled, beautiful, creative number 10 that we never quite will understand. And I love that. I love that.
I believe he's retired now, isn't he? I think his dad has he's retired.
Yeah, he was in limbo for a while where he was kind of he didn't have a club. But yeah, of course, his dad is a manager as well. So, man, if he ever goes into coaching, that would be the greatest thing ever. Like, it'd be brilliant. I'll support whoever he manages.
Okay, so
Well, he's looking for a club, right? So
yeah, you might get it, you know. Right. So that's two of the most interesting players I think we've had, because we've had Zidane, we've had Paddy McCourt, we've had Dwight York, we've had Alan Shearer, now Guy and Johan Gorkuf.
You're welcome.
That list. No, thank you. I'm pretty sure I thought that Gorkuf had played in the Premier League, but I thought he was one of those ones that would have wound up at Newcastle at that point.
Yeah, it was close.
It's strange you should say that, because I thought he'd played for Newcastle.
Well, it was so Gabriel Obertan was the guy that went from Bordeaux that year.
Oh my God, yeah.
And Henry Sauvé, who was in that Bordeaux side, and I think he was about 17, 18 at the time, and was a shout out from Alan for Paddy McCourt. At that time, Sauvé was a winger or an inside forward, and was just like pacey, tricky inside winger forward type player. And then he went to Newcastle and became like a defensive midfielder and never played. It was bizarre, but yeah, Shamak.
Just to remind you, Gabriel Obertan played for Man United.
I know. Shamak went to Arsenal as well, and like that Bordeaux team got ripped apart. But yeah, for some reason, Gorky stayed and then went to Lyon. So yeah.
Henry Sauvé, Football Manager wonder kid. That's
yes.
I remember spending a good amount of money trying to sign him every time. But yeah, so that's it. Yeah, so next one would be favorite tournament. Now I think we've already touched on it, so I think I know what you're going to go for here.
No, it's not 2000. No? It's not 2016.
I'm shocked.
I know. It's too emotional. That tournament doesn't exist other than in my heart and in my soul. It was more of an experience rather than a football tournament. Okay, so my favorite tournament of all time is Euro '96. Which everyone goes, what? Because it was the first major international tournament that I ever watched, and it just was exciting. And again, like, it's the only England side I've ever liked. Barring the current England side, which I have unbelievable amounts of respect for both Southgate and his team. So I will say that. But it was just the era of football for me. I would have been about 8, 9 years old. Karol Poborski, Davor Suker, Klinsmann, Saki, Zola, Kazaragi, Stoichkov. Oh man, it was just perfect.
Just 1 second, Matt. Arn, don't you dare post up what I think you might try and post up. Just don't. Thank you.
I've actually got a really lovely picture of an Italian player being sent off with Fabrizio Ravanelli on the side.
It's so good, that Italian side. You look at the players on that side, and then you're like, oh, Arrigo Sacchi was manager, and they got knocked out in the group stage. Oh,
yeah.
So good.
I was really angry with the Arrigo Sacchi at that tournament, because I got tickets to go and watch Italy play Czech Republic. And I was like, before pre-tournament, I was like, I just want to see Roberto Baggio. And he did not pick him. He didn't pick him. And I was like, well, at least I'll get to see Zola. And he sat on the bench for the entire game.
Didn't he get sent off? Isn't that like the only time he's ever been sent off in his career, Zola? Like, I'm sure there was...
might have been during the tournament, but like he didn't play in the game I went to. I got to see Chiesa, but that Maldini. But and they lost, which was funny, because that's what you get for not picking Baggio.
Yeah, but it was great as well. Like, obviously, like, you had Croatia. Like, it was Croatia's first ever international tournament, which is a bizarre sentence to ever say to someone that is like 20 years old now, where like trying to explain Eastern European politics to them, it's like bizarre, but I love it. And like, I will hold my hands up and say that there's very much nostalgia and that feeling of the moment. But it was magical to me, mainly because of that man you just showed there, Davor Suker's chip on Peter Schmeichel. And I think it was, I can't remember if it was Barry Davis or Brian Moore when he did it, when he chips him and he's like, Suker, brilliant. It sounds like Barry Davis. It sounds more like a Barry Davis type of commentary. But yeah, it was just magical. I love that tournament. It was my Italian 90, because I'm not old enough to remember Italian 90. So yeah.
So we've got
I'm in Mexico '86. Was my first tournament, so I'm old.
I think I'm World Cup '98 stuck in me because of Marcelo Salas and
Yes.
Davor Suker and the Bergkamp goal.
Oh yeah.
You know, there's just, and obviously Scotland were at it, but we don't really talk about much about what happened with Scotland during it. Same way in Euro '96, how we don't discuss what's particularly happened in the
Yeah.
group stages. So we move on. So favorite football top or shirt? You don't own it. If you don't have to own it, if you do,
Mhm.
that's great. So what one sticks out in your memory?
I think because now it's like I think like football kits are cool now, aren't they? And everyone's got trendy kits, and like I'm always like the one that like when someone does like a blackout kit, I'm like instantly bought. I don't know why. Like it's just my thing. I love like an all black strip. Like it's cool. But I think probably in terms of like the first time I ever saw a kit that was like again like different and like interesting to me was probably Borussia Dortmund's Champions League winning kit in the 90s, with like Karl-Heinz Riedler up front. I think Paul Lambert was playing for him at that time period, wasn't he? Yeah. And like
Paul Lambert, the Obmal, the man who won the Champions League.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was the first time I'd ever seen like a fluorescent yellow kit. And I was like, this is insane. And like the big, was it Continental, the C, whatever the big C was on it. Yeah. It was so cool to again, a younger football fan. And that's the one that always like instantly sticks in my head. Obviously growing up watching Serie A, I was like, you weren't spoiled, like you were spoiled for choice with just amazing kids like Sampdoria and Parma.
I do keep saying that like Serie A always has the best kits, but it's like Italians are just great at fashion. And the thing that irks me is it's still not good enough for the supporters. You look in the crowds and they're not wearing them.
Like, is it? I'm Napoli like sponsored by Emporio Armani this year. Like it's crazy. I love Italian. Like,
have you seen the most recent kit they've announced?
With Maradona?
They've done another one with big Maradona's face on.
It's crazy. But yeah, I think overall you are right. I think Serie A, maybe J League, but we don't get to see the J League stuff as much. But yeah, the Dortmund one's the one that immediately like comes to mind when someone says about it.
It's a good. It's one. I think it's one of those ones that I think if I ever go on a retro football website try and buy a kit, I always think one of the first options is Dortmund 96, 97, that era, and it's just how I'd look like it'd be good for when you're walking at night if you're going for a run.
Definitely, yeah.
Easiest way to get not caught by anyone. So okay, Dortmund winning kit. Next one. This will be quite an interesting one. Who is your favorite manager of all time and why?
Is it Tony Jameson?
It is Tony Jameson. His revolutionary Peterborough team changed how everyone play football forever because they didn't follow what he did. It's a tough one, this, because I'm a bit as you can probably tell from the players I chose, I'm a bit of a romantic, and I do romanticize a lot of managers from the past and stuff. So I think I've got two, but I'm around about it. So obviously for getting into the football writing side of it, like Jonathan Wilson for me is he's the equivalent to James Richardson in terms of presenting. Like Jonathan Wilson introduced me to this world of football that I'd never ever comprehended existed and loved it. And Inverting the Pyramid just completely changed everything for me. He did win the championship with Posh. He did win the championship with Posh. But yeah, so I Inverting the Pyramid was such a pivotal book. But the first real like football book that I read was A Brilliant Orange, An Erotic History of Dutch Football by, I want to say, David Winner. I think's the author.
Yep, David Winner. I've got it. Yep.
Cool. My goodness, that book was like, a football awakening, because it's a football book about the Dutch, but it's not really about football. And like that is just me. It's to a T. And it's this. He kind of does this not really chronological, but somewhat in order deep dive into Dutch football, and talks about architecture and the dikes in the country, and the country being under sea level, and artistry and revolution and philosophy. And he basically goes on this journey of trying to like rationalize why the Dutch play the way that they do, but never win anything. And it's just it's an art book, really. If I'm being really honest with you, it's like a somewhat of an art philosophy book, and I have got the most beaten up copy I've ever got of any book because I've read that a million times, and I love it because I'd always was fascinated by Dutch football and Dutch players. So for that point, I do think like Cruyff is up there in terms of that introduction to a philosophy of football that I had never seen, and obviously the Barcelona Dream Team, his use of the 3-4-3 diamond, and how that influenced Guardiola. And another one of my favorite Jonathan Wilson books is the Barcelona Legacy, which is wonderful. Again, Jonathan Wilson knocks it out of the park, and that's a great thing. But I think the other manager that I have is Saki, because again, just a fascinating person. I love that quote because he was never a footballer, and he was like, I never realized he had to be a jockey to ride a horse, or whatever the weird translated quote is that he said. And I love him because, as you can probably tell by the footballers that I like and the teams and managers that I like, I love brief moments of beauty and perfection rather than extended periods of dominance and success. Like, I think there's something beautiful about something developing organically, becoming unbelievable and influential, and then also dying and falling apart. Like, I don't know if it's the kind of like Greek tragedy comedy philosophy, but I think there's these beautiful moments in football that exist, and I think Saki is one of the kings of that, where he pretty much hit perfection with his AC Milan side and completely revolutionized how they played football in Italy, and then it just all fell apart. And like, that's as interesting and exciting to me, and it makes me, I think it's just more human, right? Like, you can have so much more in common with someone that fails as well as succeeds. And I think that humanizes him in a way that someone like a Klopp and a Guardiola, you might struggle to do. And it's not that they've not had hardships and bad times and struggled. Klopp famously struggled at Dortmund, and, whatever everyone's opinion on Guardiola's time at Bayern Munich, was it a success or a failure, and et cetera, and it could be debated. But they do have sustained periods of being very good managers, whereas Saki was almost this, like, in terms of like the big stage, was this flash in a pan, and everyone went, oh my god, that's just completely revolutionized football. And then he's just retired and now just chills out in a vineyard in Italy, and has now written a book about his team. Like, that's so much more fascinating to me than any other kind of manager.
Yeah, I think it's the fact that he doesn't. So from what I remember of his career, he does well with Milan, then goes to Italy, then becomes Italy manager. I think the only thing he does there is become runner-up, I think, in the World Cup 94.
Yeah.
And then goes back to Milan, and then, as you say, just kind of all flops and fails miserably.
It's great, and like he got the Milan job because I think it was when he was Parma manager, and they played him in the Italian Cup, and they beat Milan, and Berlusconi was like, "Oh, I'm going to hire you as Milan manager," and he went from like Serie C and B to like Serie A in like the shortest period of time. And again, it's great. It's like,
was it Rimini 2 years before he was at Milan?
Yeah. He was like, his dad was a shoemaker and he worked in a shoe factory. Like, oh, that's so much cooler than, well, I went and got my UEFA A and B license. And like, no, man, like I used to make shoes and then I managed the greatest team in the world. Amazing.
Oh, I'm just looking at back his career. I'm like surprised he had a short spell at Atletico Madrid and then went to was the director of football for Real Madrid for the 04-05 season.
But this is the reason why I like Rangnick, like Ralph Rangnick, because he's got that similar vibe where everyone thought he was insane in Germany when he first came onto the scene. And like, he went on that TV appearance and went, playing a sweeper is probably not very good. And everyone went, absolutely not having any of that in Germany. And then he goes to these clubs like Hoffenheim and Leipzig that are really despised and hated, and maybe fairly so by Bundesliga team, and completely just changes the philosophy of how the whole of German football's like played. And then you have Tuchel and Klopp and all these coaches and Nagelsmann and all these coaches coming out of this idea he's born. And like you go, well, what's he won? And you're like, nothing, but like he's just changed how a whole country perceive football. Like I love those guys.
I wanted him at Everton so bad.
Yeah,
that was my guy in the summer. I was like, he's available, and now he's head of sports and development for Lokomotiv Moscow.
Yeah, it's crazy, right?
As there has been rumors that he's apparently interested in the Man United job, which I think would be such a wild time.
That would be front page news every week. That would be great. That.
Well, I think before we go, because I think in our group chat before we did this, we did mention about it, and I do want to have a quick chat about it because I think it's just interesting to talk about it, and Arn is probably loving what's happening. The downfall of Barcelona. Money bags FC, where they go, we'll release this coach, but then we'll try and bring in this coach, but then we can't technically afford. Basically, they've spent £17 million that they cannot afford on two managers. What has been your kind of thoughts on watching that situation unfold? I guess, Matthew.
This is the danger of religion. That's what this is, because we put that club on the highest pedestal, and we were happy to sit at the altar of Cruyff and Guardiola and peddle out this more than a club philosophy, and they never had a kit sponsor, and it was UNICEF and all this, only to see them become the literal Vatican. And then when they get exposed to what they really are, we all go, ooh, isn't that a bit icky? It's the Catholic Church. They're the Catholic Church of football, and they are reaping what they have sowed. And it hurts because like Cruyff is one of my favorite managers of all time, and I like Guardiola, and I love that Barcelona team. But this is just the perfect example of where we try and pretend that football's one thing, and it's like, oh no, we're not bad and we're all good. And the minute it goes a little bit wrong, they just get exposed for who they really are. And do you know what? We should all enjoy it. We should all enjoy it because I feel sorry for diehard Barcelona fans, of course, but everyone else is loving it because we were preached upon of this is the right way to play football. Number one, I'm going to stop you there. There is no right way of playing football. And like we were spoken down to, and like, oh no, the way you play football is unbecoming of a footballer, and blah blah blah, and tiki taka, and no, and all this. And it's like, yeah, well, you abandoned that the minute you lost one person, and now look what you are. You've got flipping Luke De Jong up front.
Luke De Jong and Gerard Piqué up front.
yeah. Like, where's your principles and morality now? Like, maybe on the flip side of that, I am fascinated to see what Xavi does, because again, it's the story that they've wanted. But then again, it's only going to paper over the cracks, and we've seen the real Barcelona now, and that is so fun, so entertaining to watch. Like, it's brilliant.
It's like,
why couldn't it happen to Real Madrid? That would have been.
Well, that's the problem. Like Real Madrid, because everyone hates Real Madrid because of their history. Like again, like when you look into their history, it's murky, and then the Galacticos and stuff, and they were kind of like the easy target. And I think that's what helped elevate Barca to this status. When in reality, we should have all been getting behind Bilbao and being like, yeah, cool. They've got it down. But no, it's fascinating, isn't it?
There he goes.
Well, Sociedad.
Sociedad. Hey, it's all Basque, so, you know.
Hey, I'm Celta Vigo kind of sometimes, because I had an enamor with Celta Vigo in a football manager game. So Iago Aspas for me.
This has absolutely nothing to do with the football manager season where I played in Spain, and Adnan Januzaj scored the winner at the Bernabeu. has nothing to do with that.
Yes,
That's all.
just justice for Janusai. It wasn't his fault. It was Old Trafford's fault. Yeah,
It's all Old Trafford's fault for them. I think the thing is though, just with like how like the players they've like Messi leaves, and then it's like, okay, what do you do from there? And then it's like, well, we want to, the amount of the Griezmann situation, and then bringing in players like Martin Braithwaite, and then let's get Memphis in, and then we can't register some of these players. Koeman's paying his own release clause, and then it's just like, we kind of don't like him now, so we kind of need to go, but we can't afford to release him.
Do they still owe him that? Do they have to pay him that back?
I think they probably do.
Yeah. But then it's like the La Masia issue, because they abandoned La Masia straight away when they realized that they didn't have a generation like Iniesta, Messi, and Xavi, PK, and everyone coming through. But you're never going to have a generation like that again, probably in a lifetime. So you can't pretend that you're all for La Masia and then get upset when Bojan isn't as good as Messi. Like if you're committed to this, our youth academy, and playing the Barcelona way and playing the correct way, then you back that horse. You don't go and buy Neymar and Suarez and now obviously like people like Griezmann and stuff. It's just it was just that thing of they lulled you in with this false prophecy of this is the way that we're going to do it, and then the minute they went, we actually need to sustain the success because we understand that now is a complete freak moment in history, and then go and buy all these players and spend all this money again. Like they're reaping what they sowed. They should have.
As soon as you said Bojan, I'm like,
Bojan. My heart broke.
How did he end up at Stoke City?
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it?
How did that happen?
My heart broke because I loved Bojan. It purely came from Football Manager. It was one of those ones that was like, I love you, I want you to do so well. And then he's like, okay, he's going to Stoke, he's going to Roma, then he's going to Ajax, then he's going to Milan. Then he suddenly pops up in the Stoke, and you're like, right, okay. And then you look at the players we were talking about it in Barcelona. I think one of the episodes we did based on Barcelona, the amount of players they've sold, like Conrad de la Fuente, Trincão's on loan to Wolves, but I imagine if he does well, Wolves will pay the money. They've just, as you say, they clearly have kind of everyone must go, but we kind of need to we don't have much youth. And they were that graphic they posted for Ansu Fati returning is still hilarious to me. Just like, we've got this guy, at least we've got this one.
Well, like the thing is, they do have some players in there. Like there's Nico, there's Gavi, there's Pedri, there's Ansu Fati. The kid that went to Leipzig obviously moved as a Mariba. I can never know.
Yeah, he likes Mariba.
Yeah, and but so there is this. Yeah, there is enough there to pretend and create this illusion of like, we do have our second La Masia generation, aren't we? Did you remember what we are?
It was in the Euros. And somebody on, I can't remember who it was, probably Danny Murphy or someone, but they said, look at the Barcelona producing these players like Pedri. And I'm like, they bought him.
Yeah, exactly.
You bought Pedri. Like, how didn't produce him? Look
at all these players that you produce, like Dani Almo, who left because you wouldn't pay him money and he went to play in Zagreb. Like, it's just this false narrative that exists around them that makes it so funny. Like if they weren't so preachy and high and mighty, we'd all maybe be like, it's a bit rough that. But because they've been on their high horse for so long, it's great. And then obviously that makes you just love Atletico Madrid even more because Simeone just seems like a man that revels in this and will just destroy them. And it's great. That's entertainment, man. Like sign me up. Like, sign me up. I want to watch Diego Simeone take down the top teams. Let's do it.
I would like to see an episode of Diego Maradona before everything happened suddenly takes down teams. Like that Big Ron Atkinson, not Big Ron, was it Big Ron? Yeah, Big Ron came into these football clubs like Peterborough, did that TV show and just tried to change the thing.
Oh, God,
But yeah, anyway, that's what you get for trying to make Super League, I guess.
Yes.
Matt, do you have anything to plug or anything to promote? This is your time.
Just the podcast, which is pretty much on everything that makes a podcast and puts out. Football Manager Therapy. We have weekly episodes that come out every Tuesday. Had to remember that then. And we do have a Patreon as well, which is patreon.com/football manager therapy. You get a couple of bits of extra content. It's only £3 a month, but it just helps us tick over with the weekly podcast and stuff like that. But
there we go. He's on it like a car bonnet is our
there you go. There you go. But yeah, we just talk about Football Manager every week and have a laugh, and occasionally go off on random tangents. So if that's your thing, yeah,
I love a tangent.
Oh, we do love a tangent. If you haven't done so already, please like and subscribe. It is at the bottom, as we normally do. We will be back at some point when we decide to have some topic to talk about, since a certain, not going to name any names, Tony Jameson took our Monday night spot. Okay, love him to bits. If you haven't done so already, again, Matthew, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure to speak to you. I've been Eddie Sideburns. He has been Aaron Furious. We will see you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.